Recordings in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Platoon, Foxtrot Platoon, evenings and weekends, week 12, day 2, more Django-ORM. We're going to be covering these things. This one's exciting, and hopefully you'll be excited by the time we get there. I know I will be. But yesterday, y'all did some Pokemon Pokédex things. We're going to continue that. So this is telling us the application as of yesterday, end of day 1 branch. Clone that down. Great. Check out day 1. I didn't look how to spell it. I think it was lowercase. Yeah, end of day 1 branch. There we go. Okay, cool. We're doing what y'all were doing yesterday, and where you should have ended yesterday. Let's open this up, get it all fresh and new. I think we're there. Great. So yesterday, y'all were looking at model fields. Today, we're going to do a little bit more with model fields in Django and show off some new stuff. What would be called structures in other languages when talking about object-oriented programming. We're directly using it with models here. So useful model fields. Please update your Pokemon model with these additional fields. Where is that? Oh, we don't have to navigate. We'll just do it right here. There it is. So slap that over there. Easy peasy. Let's take a look at what this model is telling us. Now that we're all experts on SQL, I bet we can kind of convert this to, the knowledge we got from there. We've got a Pokemon class. We're pulling from models.model. Everything is models.models.models. If you don't like looking at that, you could probably do something like that and then rip models off of everything. I don't know if that's the right exactly. You might be able to get away with it like that instead and then get rid of models, but that's okay. Y'all don't mind looking at it, I'm sure. So we got a name with this char field, max length 255, a level, it's integer field, default 1, date encountered, models date field, auto now add true. That's pretty useful. We don't have to come up with logic for that and put that into the database. When this model is created, it decides what the time is at that moment, and it puts it into here. And then captures a Boolean field. So when defining a model field, you have the ability to set the null to true and the blank to true. By default, they're both false. And knowing when to use these options is a common source of confusion for developers. I don't know it super well. I'll go look things up if it's not working the way it's supposed to, but here's a helpful little table for the different types of field types and when you should and should not set null to true or blank to true. Again, these are default false. But if you're planning on using a field and you want it blank or null, maybe, look through this. I'm not going to read all these out for you, but it's a nice thing to reference. Improving our Pokemon model. So what are we going to be adding to it? Well, we will be improving it down here. Right now, we're going to take a look at this Pokemon model, interact with it real time using Django's shell. So we are going to have to make sure I got Django running the right way on here. I am at the root level within the repository. I am on the right branch. So I need to create a virtual environment. V doesn't usually get it. But if you see, I've got an alias set up. So when I say venv, it does all these things. No, stop being helpful, VS Code. What else we got? All right, we got a programmers.txt. Did I edit this one? I probably won't have any issues with it. Yeah, I did not. I meant to do this in class. I can't believe I pushed that up. So these three here, you'll notice don't have a version locked. That is because I was running a brand new cutting edge Python 3.12, and these libraries didn't work for me. So I just blew them away in the requirements file, didn't set a version, updated it myself. Don't know why I pushed. I wasn't planning on doing that, but it did merge into this branch. So we probably won't have any issues with install, but if you did, you can always, reduce the requirements in the requirements.txt. Not the right answer. The right answer is probably, hey, which Python did you build this with? What is a real true list of your actual dependencies? But I'm pretty certain that's not going to bite us in the butt. What do we got now? I think these are the ones that were in there anyways. So I'll just put those back. Pip free shows you your current installed modules in your pip. If that's a virtual environment, great. I can pipe it in requirements.txt, rewrote it, and now our requirements.txt has strict versions in there. Sweetness. The other thing I'm going to need to do is we're hopping into the shell, and then we're going to be interacting possibly with the database. Yeah, this .save right here, that's going to be trying to write to the database. So I need a database. If we look at yesterday's curriculum, y'all did some weird stuff with Docker Compose. Scroll to the bottom to get to the good stuff, but basically you're standing up a Docker environment with a database in it. It's all being handled by Docker Compose up and down. Hopefully I have no issues. Sweet, got a database. All right. Improving our Pokemon model. So notice I did make updates to this. This is the model. This reflects something in the database. This model here is not the database model, the object, the instance, the table that lives, in our database. This here is basically just its own table. If I want to make changes to this one and have that reflected in the database, I have to make a migration to the database. In a perfect world, your database has everything you ever need, and you don't have to make changes to it. If you needed to, you wouldn't go into the brains. You wouldn't SQL, PSQL in there and start adding tables and doing stuff. You would build it here in your models.py, and then you would make a migration because now you got a paper trail of what you did. And that's going to be kind of Django's manner of handling this. This is a cool thing Django does. A lot of times you have to build them yourself and make them like a patch, and you patch your models, and you have to keep track of them. Not here. Django ought to handle that for us. Python, manage.py, make migrations. Ooh, what did it do? It created this. This might look like a lot of hoopla to you, but this is instructions on what was ran on the database. Or rather, these are instructions on what we're going to run on the database. And it should have some of our changes here, basically. And it does say, generated by Django. Next, we're going to migrate it. The making of the migrations just generates this file that doesn't do anything to the database. I know it's 2 whole steps, but it's saving you like 50 steps. We've applied the migrations. They're in the database now. We should be good to go. If there were a bunch of migrations made, we'd use make migrations every time we added a new thing. This would apply all of them. Or the most recent one, if it references the others. It gets a little wonky. Don't throw these away. You got to keep those. You got to have history of what you did your database, because there's not really there's nothing like that. There's nothing else like that. So Django's already improving our databases by giving us version control and source control and whatever you want to call it. Django does not pay me for this instruction. I just like Django. I'm glad we're talking about it. Here's a Django thing. Python, manage.py, shell. we're in a cool shell. Oh, Jordan, I've seen this before in Python. Not like this one, you ain't. This is not a Python shell. This is a Django shell. This stood up all the Python we have, everything we got created going on here, and any interactions it has, the database we're connected to. So we can do things in this Python Django shell, and it will interact with the database directly. Sound cool, right? I thought it sounded cool, but it is still a Python shell. We do still have to import some stuff in here uh, from Pokemon app models, import Pokemon. We now have that. So from our models, I'm not just copy pasting this with no thought whatsoever. I'm creating this Pokemon Charizard. I am building it from this model here, and it is going to basically make an instance of this model, which will be associated with the table. Charizard equals Pokemon class, and then you all have seen this before. It's object-oriented programming. Set the name of the level. I don't have to do this, and I do have to do that. None of these are null. It's gonna whine if I don't. And there, it's in. Nothing too fancy. Looks good to me. That's all we're gonna get from that. I guess we could probably do something like that, but it's just an object. It doesn't have any special, interactions we can do outside of what you're normally going to be doing with a Python model object. Sorry. Oh yeah, I mean you can print if you want to, but it's going to be kind of giving us the same things, right? Print Charizard Pokemon object to none 1. This is fine. Database probably just got up the alls. That's it. That's all I want to show you. We created a model based off the models here, but we're going to do more with that here in just a second. So let's hop out. Your options are many. You can use exit. I'm going to do Control D. That's what I always do. Stuck in a shell, Control D gets you out of it. Control C kills a process. Control D gets you out of shells. Adding class methods to our models. So some of you, I can see it in your eyes, are thinking, well, Jordan, I'd rather use SQL for that. SQL's great. Wrong. That's a bad opinion and stupid. We can add, just like a regular old object, functions to these models. So we're straight up associating Python code with these models here. SQL can't do that. We would have to build some kind of structure around that, some kind of way to map the object relationally, to the table, like an object, relational mapping, something like that. That's what we got here, though. Yeah. So let's read what we got. Dunder method. This is our string method. You know how I called Charizard earlier and it just said, yeah, it's an object. Well, now if I call Charizard by itself, or any Pokemon I put in here, it will formulate this nice fancy string for us with the name. Has it been captured? Has not been captured? That's going to be useful. Okay, this one's fine. We'll play with that one. But this is the big one. Change caught status, self captured equals status, self dot save. Oh wait, that's going to show its status. So rather than interacting with this object, I got ahead of myself. Rather than just interacting with this object by saying Pokemon dot captured, we're actually going to have an improvement upon that. A function that's going to return a status to us in a string form that we can use. This levels the Pokemon up, or Pokemon can be leveled. Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's really it. Nothing fancy. We do not need to make migrations, by the way. So earlier, we did make changes to this model here because that was going to be reflected in our database, in our SQL. We are not going to make migrations for this because this doesn't go in the SQL. This is still just Python interacting with the model. You could, there's no downside to doing that. It's going to tell you, hey, you don't have to do that. By the way, where we plug all this in, they're still just objects. We're not treating them any different. VS Code tries to be helpful. We're just going to use them like this, like as if they were, normal object normal class methods. Once all this is set, we just start throwing in our init strings. If we had an init, we're not going to use inits here, but our dunder strings and then our functions. But if we did want to try and make a migration, it's going to say, hey, no changes detected, because none of this needs to go into the database. No problem. Even if you did get overzealous, not wait for it and run it, it's probably just going to say, hey, no changes. So don't worry about running that. Don't do it willy-nilly, but it'll tell you if you made a change that isn't the database or needs to be migrated to the database. So back in our shell. You can just up arrow through this. It does keep track of that. I don't know how. I wonder why that is. I would expect it kills the shell and your history's lost, but it handles it. So as before, we're going to create a new Charizard. Great. So instead of just getting back, hey, this is an object, we now get this fancy string back. Pokemon Charizard has been captured, which is this. That's how the dunder string works. That's a little bit more useful. We can also change caught status. So if you wanted to change caught status, you could do that. I'm going to copy paste. I don't feel like typing that out. False. And now look, it has yet to be caught. So these functions are working with this model here. Yeah, that's all we want to talk about with that. Think of the power you can have on the back end just here in the model for interacting with your database tables. Some of this is going to be handled at different areas. This is not necessarily the best place to put a ton of logic, but anything that interacts directly with the model, this is not a bad place to put it for now. Django admin site. This is pretty sweet. We've got the shell here, and yeah, you could probably interact with Django, interact with the database any way you want to. Save that. Is that going to work? Yeah, it should be in the database now. But what if we had a sweet old front end that interacted with the site or with our Django and the database, and it's already ready for us? We just have to do, this little small thing here. Okay, yeah. Well, when people ask what are the benefits of Django, this is an easy one that comes to mind. Don't list this as the number one thing, but this sure is handy. Yeah. Story time. When I got to DRW, I was building something in Flask, and I was arguing to build it in Django because it had an admin site, and they needed an admin site, and I figured we could save a whole lot of work if we just stood up Django and used an admin site. Didn't argue very good. I'd only been there for 2 months. Nobody wanted to hear my 4 months of combined Python experience, but I was right. We could have done this. And now they have to manage a silly Flask app. So that should be lowercase. Within the Pokemon app, let's go to admin.py. If that is not created, you could create it yourself. We didn't have to paste this. It's already here. Well, if we did, that's what we'd paste. So in admin.py, we're going to borrow these libraries. We're going to borrow that model. Again, here's a nice paper trail. We don't have to come up with how Pokemon got here. We see it. We imported it just like any old Python module you normally would. And then admin.site.register. This is all we have to do to allow the admin site to interact with this model. Let's get out of that. The other thing we want to use, somebody has to be able to go onto the site for the very first time. Someone has to be able to interact with it and do all the things. We're going to do that now. Python manage.py. This is create super user. Great. it's going to prompt you for some stuff. My username is Squid. I'm going to leave that blank. Email address, I'm going to leave that blank. 123, 123. It's going to tell you, hey, that's a bad password. I don't care. This is a lecture. Don't tell me what to do. And now we're just going to run the server. Did I get the pop-up or do I have to go look at it? Oh, no, I do have to go look at it. So this is going to be running on localhost 8000, as you can see here. That shouldn't do, I don't think it'll default to admin. Probably will tell us, oh, hey, look, we got Django running. I should have known better. Admin. Squid. 1, 2, 3. Ooh. This is our admin site. This is mainly, well, it tells you right there, authentication, authorization. This is going to be who can log in and do these things. I go to users, there's just me groups. That's probably something more like LDAP or AD groups, Active Directory, security groups, stuff like that. Don't worry about that. But here's our Pokemons. And you can see we got a Charizard yet to be caught. Look familiar? That's the one we saved. Well, what if I was in the shell and I created another one? We don't have to do that anymore. This has kind of everything we need to know to be able to kind of crud these things. I know that looks bad. You see those plus signs. That does say add Pokemon back there. I think it's interacting improperly with my plugin. But we need a new Pokemon. We're going to create a brand new one. What's a Pokemon? Metal Greymon, my favorite Pokemon. Level 2. Captured. Save. Look at that. We created one right then and there. We created it. We can delete these if we wanted to. Can we update these? Save. Ooh, we can update. And we for sure can delete. Charizard, that's not a real Pokemon. Delete. Yes, I'm sure. We've got full CRUD capabilities, and all we did was write a model. That's super powerful. We didn't have to do any of that. Remember when y'all were working on all this, going through these pains of making a CRUD application and writing all the logic to be able to read and update and get a list of things? This does it right here, right now. And I could turn this over and say, look, you can interact with what I've built so far. This is pretty great. There are a lot of libraries that try to replicate this behavior. It is baked into Django. You don't have to pull this in. This isn't some weird library someone else stood up. This is just part of it. Pretty strong. When you're testing applications you're standing up, you will often probably be coming to this to be your source of truth and getting out of the code. I wouldn't recommend doing that for standing up a bunch of, what do they call them again? Oh, I've been coding too long. Dadgummit. I want to call it like fake data, but there's a word for it in Django. I done forgot what it's called. But if you want to fill in a bunch of fake data, you probably run a script to do that. Don't type these in each and every time and then rip your database down and up. But there you go. Starts with an F. Man. That's it. That's some Django. Today, y'all are going back to your school API. School API? Yeah. Should, for the most part, be pretty similar to what I covered today. That's it.